By 1994, Madonna was the most recognized female celebrity on the planet. As she promoted her album Bedtime Stories, she was also engaging in an ongoing audition process for the movie Evita. Although she dominated the pop world, her film career had been patchy to say the least. She'd starred in many failed films, but she kept going, making more, most of them total flops, some of them all-time legendary flops like Shanghai Surprise. But, credit where it's due, Madonna had appeared in some very successful films as well, like Desperately Seeking Susan, A League of Their Own, and Dick Tracy. Madonna was heavily influenced by Hollywood. She was a distinctly visual artist, and you can see that influence in many of her extraordinary music videos. She kept persevering with her film career despite all the flops because she really cared about the movies and must have thought on some level that eventually she would find success, just as she had in her music career. Of all her film projects, Evita was the most personal. Madonna clearly related to Eva Perón, and she spent many years campaigning for the role. Securing the role was not easy. There were several other actresses lined up for it, including Michelle Pfeiffer and Meryl Streep. Clearly, Madonna did not have the film credits or the acting prowess to rival Pfeiffer or Streep, but on the other hand, neither of those actresses had the musical skills Madonna had. What's more, she was able to use her music videos as an elaborate audition campaign. The second single from Bedtime Stories was Take a Bow. Madonna filmed the video in Ronda in southern Spain. It's set in the 1940s and it centers around a bullfighter and his jilted lover. Of course, the 1940s was Eva Perón's era, and look at how Madonna is dressed in this video. It is unmistakably Eva Perón coded. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's positioning herself for the role. Take a Bow became Madonna's 11th #1 single in America. It held the top spot for 7 weeks, her longest ever run at the top of the Billboard chart. She also surpassed Carole King to become the female songwriter with the most #1 singles. It's safe to say that the Take a Bow campaign was a big success. Madonna sent a copy of the Take a Bow video to director Alan Parker. He had been lined up to direct Evita. She also sent him a handwritten letter in which she outlined why she was the only person who could play Eva Perón. It will be the first of several groveling attempts Madonna engaged in to secure this role. By the end of the shoot, she said she had groveled so much for the role, she had no skin left on her knees. As Madonna promoted her new album and lobbied for the Evita role, she weighed up whether or not to go on tour. If she had gone on tour, she would easily have made a fortune and been in total creative control of the process. There would have been no groveling required. Having explored the deepest depths of Madonna fandom, it's rumoured that the tour was going to be called the Unconscious Tour. If you watch this performance she gave at the Brit Awards in early 1995, it'll give you a sense of what the show might have looked like. Her brother, Christopher Ciccone, helped her to choreograph this performance. In his incredibly bitchy autobiography, he says that she found out that she had secured the role shortly after giving this performance. At that point, she ditched any plans she might have had to tour so that she could focus everything on her next film. She was going to become Eva Perón. Even after securing the role, Madonna's Evita campaign continued. She was positioning herself in the public consciousness as a singer rather than a controversialist. Her 1992 album Erotica and the accompanying sex book had caused such a firestorm it overshadowed her music, and so in 1995 she released Something to Remember, a compilation of her greatest ballads. This album was a statement of intent. She was saying to her haters, look, if I didn't really have talent, how would I have been able to record so many great ballads? And I think it's a fair point. If you listen to Something to Remember all the way through, it's a really impressive record. And yeah, the simple fact is, if she wasn't really talented, there is no way she would have put together a body of work of that quality. Recording the Evita soundtrack would take Madonna out of her comfort zone. She would have to hit notes that she had never hit before and sing a style of music that was alien to her, and so she enlisted vocal coach Joan. 'Cause 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 'c
do kind of yell a bit here and there, which is so great.
The original production of Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Evita opened in London in 1978. Elaine Page starred as Eva Perón. It was a huge hit. Evita opened on Broadway the following year with Patti LuPone in the starring role. Writing a musical about the wife of Argentine dictator Juan Perón may have seemed like an odd choice, but then again, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice's first musical was Jesus Christ Superstar, a rock musical about Jesus. So yeah, who's to say what is and isn't a weird choice for a musical? Check out this recent interview with Tim Rice. He discusses the life of Eva Perón and explains what he found so appealing about her.
And I'm very much torn between being a fan of Eva Perón and thinking she was an extremely murky person. There was certainly
what was the murkiness, by the way? Because we've heard about the good side of her.
Yes, I mean the fact that people tended to disappear. But and anybody who opposed Perón and the way that he marshaled the workers against the so-called aristocracy ruling classes. But I don't think at the time when Eva was alive, I don't think that they were any worse than the average dictator. The thing about Eva Perón was that she was glamorous as well, and I think she was a big factor in the huge attraction of Peronism. I mean, clearly she was. I remember the first question I was ever asked about Evita in the interview was, haven't you written, how can you glamorize this unpleasant woman? And I said, well, the fact that she was glamorous is the story.
Madonna was drawn to Eva Perón because she was perhaps one of the few people on the planet who could actually relate to her. I mean, if you just look at this photograph of Eva Perón, there is a striking physical resemblance. And also the fact that Eva Perón transformed into Eva Perón. She was born Eva Duarte, but she became this almost messianic figure. And here you can see the younger Eva as a brunette, B-movie and radio actress. The blonde hair was an affectation she would adopt later on, and it became central to her public image as the First Lady of Argentina. See the contrast of her right here as First Lady, dripping in jewels and couture. This is an expression of blonde ambition, something Madonna knew a thing or two about. There's no way the young Madonna was going to stay in her hometown of Michigan, or remain brunette for that matter. She of course became the master of reinvention, transforming her image time and time again. And there's no way the young Eva Duarte was going to stay in her hometown of Junín. And so these two wildly ambitious young ladies left their hometowns and went to the big city. For Eva, that was Buenos Aires, and for Madonna, that was New York City. They were both desperately seeking stardom. You could make a whole video on the biographical parallels between Madonna and Eva Perón, but I'm not going to do that here. Suffice to say, there are many parallels between these two ladies. So when Madonna said that she was born to play the role of Eva Perón, she was clearly onto something. Tim Rice thought that that was very much the case. He wanted Madonna in the film, but Andrew Lloyd Webber was unsure.
Now, you have said, I think, that Madonna was not your first choice.
No, I haven't. I mean, I always thought Madonna was a very, very intelligent idea. I mean, if you wanted to go for a piece of sort of typecast and character casting, yeah, it's brilliant, and she does come over as that. I mean, she plays Madonna really.
So Andrew Lloyd Webber sounds a little bit ambivalent in that interview. On the one hand, he doesn't want to concede much ground and say that she wasn't his first choice. He in fact says that she was the obvious choice to play this role, but he withholds his praise somewhat by saying that she plays Madonna. Not to split hairs, but to split hairs, it's kind of what I do on this channel. Many years later, Andrew Lloyd Webber gave an interview to Claire Balding. She asked him about Madonna, and he gave a very different answer.
Can I ask you a quick question about awards and the Oscars generally, and Madonna and all of that? What was it like? It's just my question. What
Madonna
was it?
or the Oscars?
Well, both.
Well, I can say that I'm one of the very few people who's actually been to church with Madonna. Maybe the wrong forum to say this, but it was... it's absolutely true, so it won't go anywhere else, you see. No, I mean, working with Madonna, she's an extreme pro, you know, and she was absolutely focused on playing the role of Evita. I don't think anybody else could have really played it. I think she was. I think she was almost sort of. I remember seeing her when she first started, and she did the first video of Material Girl. And I remember calling Tim Rice and saying, "I don't know who this girl is, but she's almost playing the role of Eva Perón." And she was. I mean, she did the whole thing about taking off my fur and giving it to the I'm not a material girl and everything. And it was kind of like she was playing Eva then, and it was an act.
So, according to Mr. Lloyd Webber, excuse me, I should say Lord Lloyd Webber, in the film Evita, Madonna is playing Madonna, but in her Material Girl music video, she's playing Eva Perón. I mean, make your mind up. In January 1996, Madonna arrived in Buenos Aires to begin filming Evita, and as you can see from this video, as she steps out onto her hotel balcony to greet her fans, she's already channeling Evita. You half expect her to break out into Don't Cry For Me Argentina at any minute. Her presence in Argentina caused pandemonium. Her fans camped outside her hotel, singing her songs to her even through the night as she was trying to sleep, and they followed her wherever she went. Meanwhile, hardline Peronists were making it known that they were not happy that Madonna was in Argentina playing their great hero, Eva Perón. By the mid-90s, Peronism was far from dead in Argentina, and the legacies of Juan and Eva Perón continued to shape Argentinian politics. Even if you've never seen the film Evita or the musical, you will know the famous balcony scene where Madonna or Elaine Page or whoever's playing Evita steps onto the balcony of the Casa Rosada and sings Don't Cry For Me Argentina. In this interview, Andrew Lloyd Webber explains how seeing one of Judy Garland's final performances in London would inspire the famous balcony scene in Evita.
She's in a bit of a bad way on that one, isn't she?
Yes, she's older. It's
you know, I saw what I think was the last performance she ever did at a place called the Talk of the Town in London, and she was late, and I mean like an hour and a half late.
So like Guns N' Roses late.
Yeah. I mean, really, but people were sort of throwing things on the stage, and this broken woman came on, and she tried to do Over the Rainbow, and she couldn't do it.
Indeed.
And you know, do you know that's what gave me the idea of how to do Evita?
Really?
Because I was always very worried about the idea of... I couldn't get my head around the story of Eva Perón at all when Tim Rice suggested it. And then I suddenly thought, what if I gave her an anthem, which became Don't Cry For Me Argentina, that then turned on her, like Garland did the Rainbow had for Garland.
Eva Perón died from cancer when she was just 33 years old, the same age as Jesus, oddly enough, a good age to go if you have a messiah complex. In this scene, Andrew Lloyd Webber is depicting Evita's last stand. She knows she's dying, and she's saying goodbye to the people of Argentina. So next up, we'll contrast Don't Cry For Me Argentina with the actual speech Eva Perón gave when she knew she was dying. The song Don't Cry For Me Argentina depicts Evita in a sympathetic light. She's sadly saying goodbye, but the actual speech Eva Perón gave was far more angry, blood-curdling even. When Eva Perón became First Lady, her popularity soared. Her fame in Argentina was comparable to Princess Diana's at the height of her fame in the 1980s, and the people of Argentina wanted her to take on a more formal political role, so she would become vice president and rule alongside her husband, Juan Perón. She considered this option, and she kind of wanted it because she was very ambitious, but she knew she couldn't take it because she was dying. So there you have it. As you can see, Eva Perón was one hell of a demagogue. The people loved her and she knew how to deliver a rabble-rousing speech. But watch this moment as she's listening to the cheers from the crowd and the camera zooms in on her face. You see almost the look of death. This is a woman who knows she's dying. This is her final stand. Wow, I find that footage so chilling. Anyhow, here's Evita in her younger years when she was still well. The reason the Don't Cry for Me Argentina balcony scene is so effective is because Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice are playing with such strong material. There are so many layers to it. The power of this woman's last stand is encapsulated in the song Don't Cry for Me Argentina, although presented in a more sympathetic light. And it takes a real A-list diva to successfully sing that song. You really need to have the charisma, uniqueness, nerve and talent, the star power, if you will, to deliver a moment like that and make the crowd, or the audience, believe it. Madonna is the last person to let an opportunity slip her by. You don't sell 400 million records without being very ambitious, and so she wanted to film the Don't Cry for Me Argentina scene on the actual balcony of the Casa Rosada. That's the presidential palace in Buenos Aires. Slight problem, the Argentinian government had made it perfectly clear that that was not going to happen. For hardline Peronists, it would have been almost blasphemous for Madonna to do that, but she was determined, and so she set up a private one-to-one meeting with the president of Argentina, Carlos Menem. And here he is, check him out. He's a bit of a lounge lizard. He looks like he could have been a 70s pop star, as a matter of fact. For Carlos Menem, meeting the most famous female singer on the planet was an interesting proposition, and so he invited her to his private residence, and she showed up fully dragged up as Eva Perón. He was quite startled when he saw this ghost of Argentina's past walking towards him, and somehow she managed to charm him, and he said, "Okay, you can film on my balcony." Whilst making the film, Madonna kept a fairly extensive diary, which was later published in Vanity Fair, the Evita diaries, and so we can get a sense of what she was thinking as she filmed the famous balcony scene on the actual balcony of the Casa Rosada and not on a soundstage. She filmed the balcony scene on March 10th. Afterwards, she wrote this in her diary. "In the exact place she had stood so many times before, I raised my arms and looked into the hungry eyes of humanity, and at that moment I felt her enter my body like a heat missile. But I felt a great sadness too, because she is haunting me. She is pushing me to feel things." Director Alan Parker had a very clear mission statement. He wanted this film to be, well, a film and not a glorified Madonna music video. But in this musical, there's virtually no dialogue. It's all singing and dancing. Madonna's choreographer had this to say.
So, I've never been Madonna's best friend, but because we worked a lot together, we have a rapport. We know how to work together. We've been in very intimate situations, creative situations together. So I already had this relationship going into the project. Now, Madonna didn't ask me to do the movie Evita. Alan Parker asked me to do the movie Evita. But Alan Parker had a monster, overinflated ego. From what I had heard that about his past films, it was always an Alan Parker film. He liked being the king of the movie, no matter what it was about or who was in it. Well, in a Madonna film, I'm sorry, but it's going to be Madonna and not Alan Parker.
Yeah.
And he couldn't really deal with that very well.
So, did Alan Parker get his wish? I'd say not. Evita certainly works as a film, but it is essentially a glorified Madonna music video. Whatever tensions there may have been between Madonna and Alan Parker were about to increase because Madonna had received a few visits from her then boyfriend, Carlos, while she was filming. And here you can see Madonna with her then boyfriend, Carlos. After a night of passion together, she had gotten pregnant. I mean, look at him. I mean, how could you resist, quite frankly? As a leading lady, it is really taboo to get pregnant while you're making a film because as the bump becomes more visible, it's going to be difficult to film your scenes when your character isn't supposed to be pregnant. Of course, Eva Perón never had children of her own, so now Madonna was going to have to film the last part of the film pregnant. When the Buenos Aires scenes had been filmed, the cast and crew flew to Budapest to finish the film there. By this point, Madonna was visibly pregnant. In this climactic scene where Evita discovers that she is dying, fortunately the bedding would cover the evidence. But this scene proved to be very traumatic for Madonna because her own mother had died of cancer around about the same age as Eva Perón. And so Madonna was essentially going to have to recreate her own mother's death whilst being pregnant with her first child. And you can see Jonathan Pryce in this scene in the role of Juan Perón. Interestingly, the role of Juan Perón was originally going to go to Placido Domingo, the great opera singer, but he turned it down. When Eva Perón was diagnosed with cancer, she wasn't actually informed of the fact. Cancer was a dirty word in those days, you just didn't really mention it. She had cervical cancer and a hysterectomy would probably have removed it, but that would have rendered her infertile, and so by the time she was able to discuss treatment options, it was too late, and besides, it would have been unthinkable for her to have a hysterectomy as the First Lady of Argentina, the mother of Argentina. The symbolism of having a hysterectomy and rendering her infertile was just too much to bear. On a slightly less gloomy note, it's worth noting that Madonna changes costume 85 times during the making of this film, and so she entered the history books as the leading lady with the most costume changes in a single film. I think it's safe to say Eva Perón will be very happy to have had such a big fashion moment in her biopic. So, 85 costume changes later, is Evita actually a good film? When it came out, reviews were mixed. The New York Times had this to say. In Evita, her most colossal music video, Madonna postures resplendently through the role of a pop goddess with a nation's worth of adoring fans. Well, that's quite a snarky intro if you ask me. The review goes on to say this. But the film is still breathless and shrill since Alan Parker's direction shows no signs of a moral or political compass and remains in exhausting overdrive all the time. Finally, I'll quote this section. If Evita aspires to being the perfect artifact for a world of image worship, then maybe it hits its mark. Ooh, I'd say that's a pretty negative review from the New York Times. Although the New York Times review does go on to single out Madonna's performance for praise, you can imagine her reading that review and slamming the newspaper against the wall in one of her mansions. The script for Evita was written by Alan Parker, but the film was originally going to be directed by Oliver Stone, and he is credited on the screenplay, although it isn't clear how much of his work actually remains in the final draft. But there is a parallel universe in which Oliver Stone made this film instead, and judging by his movies like JFK, Platoon, etc., his version of Evita would have been darker and more cerebral. It would have explored the political aspects of Peronism and whether they were fascist adjacent or not in much more detail. Whatever Patti LuPone or the New York Times may have thought about the film, it did very well. It was released to a huge amount of fanfare. Madonna appeared on the cover of American Vogue, and the film took over $140 million worldwide with a budget of $55 million, so that means it made a decent amount of money. Evita was released in December 1996, and so we need to look at the 1997 numbers. It was the 42nd highest grossing film of 1997. The highest grossing film of that year, in case you were wondering, was Men in Black. So with Evita at 42, I mean, that is a pretty good number for a musical about an Argentinian dictator's wife. So all in all, it was a pretty big success for Madonna. You have to remember that there hadn't been a successful movie musical since Grease in 1978, and so the fact that Evita made so much money caused Hollywood to take notice, and some believed that it could usher in a new great age of movie musicals, but that of course didn't happen. MGM had created the great age of the movie musical back in the 1940s, but it had fizzled out by the early 1950s, and since then there had been standalone movie musicals that were big at the box office, like Cabaret, The Sound of Music, and later Evita, but these films proved to be exceptions rather than the rule, and none of them would usher in a new era of movie musicals. Madonna was paid $1 million for her performance in Evita, and she didn't take a percentage of the box office gross. But for Madonna, $1 million really isn't that much money. She makes far more money from her music, especially when she's doing an arena tour. She could make $1 million a night. So she didn't do this film for the money. She did it because she really wanted to do it. This was her passion project. All of Hollywood was watching, and the big question was, would Madonna be nominated for an Oscar for her performance in Evita? After having a patchy film career, it would have been the ultimate vindication. She was nominated for and won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a musical or comedy, and this was a very big deal because she was finally given some cred from the Hollywood establishment, and winning a Golden Globe is often a springboard to being at least nominated for an Oscar.
Can I just start this off by thanking all the members of the Hollywood press, if there's anyone in this room. Thank you for your support. Whatever. Hollywood Foreign Press, yes, that's what I said. What? I feel like I'm dreaming right now, yeah. No, just a great celebration. Because this is a dream come true. To be awarded for an acting performance, absolutely.
Okay, I found that a little bit hilarious. If you rewind that clip, you'll notice when she thanks the Hollywood Foreign Press, she then says, whatever. She just can't quite bring herself to fawn over people. It really does not come naturally to her. And for somebody who was so successful in the music industry, to have to bend the knee in the movie industry was clearly quite painful. Needless to say, Madonna was not nominated for an Oscar. She nonetheless showed up at the ceremony and sang the song You Must Love Me from the film. Interestingly, this song was not included in the original musical. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice wrote it especially for the film, and they did win the Oscar for Best Original Song that year. So for Madonna to show up and sing the song was an act of class, you might say. It was also her way of saying F you. And so with this performance of You Must Love Me, Madonna's Evita campaign ended. She went straight back to work and started recording her next album, Ray of Light. Many of her fans would say that is the best album she ever made. Okay, so final thoughts. Is Evita actually any good? I would say it's a relatively good film, but it's a great Madonna music video.